welcome to another video. This is Kevin, also known as AKAAWOL. Today we are going to play with these. This, let's see if I can get the camera to focus on that, is basically like my multicolor bag I did before. I've got a couple of these little pieces together. Let's see if we can zoom in. And they look like this. Now, last time I did this, I was working with a small bottle that I had a dice in it, and I would shake the bottle every time, and that took forever. This time we're going to use this. This is random.org. They've got a random integer generator, which, because I'm actually working near my computer, I can do that. And yeah. Okay, so time for the clipboard. This time we're just using my little easel here. Get that set up. And we have a bit of string that I've started to sort, but still needs some doing, so I'll show you what I'm doing. I've got this great big clip here, and what I need to do is each one of those little segments you saw is 20 strings, and it is neat. Okay, so basically what I want is I want to have 10 of one color on one side and 10 of the color on the other. So this is going to come over here. Now so far I've only managed to see 2, 4, 6, 7. I managed to find 7 individual colors that I matched up. And so now it's the trick here is I have to try to balance it so it's without looking like it's too contrived, right? So if I put all the greens to one side, that doesn't look very random at all. So what I need to do now is find 3 more strands from both here and here and mix it in with this. So let's see. It's kind of an olive green, or let's do the surface over here. Let's see. So this one matches, and this weird green. So these two. The very unglamorous side of making, trying to sort and figure out and untangle it so it comes out nice. Okay, so that should be 9, right? 2, 3, 6, 9. Need 1 more. So now, this 10 goes to this side, and this 10 is over on this side. Bring these 2 close together, and we can start. Let's see if I move this light over here. We can't brighten this up just a bit. Alright. So now I'm just picking whichever color kind of comes up quick and easy. No science to it whatsoever. And I'm going to use this one to kind of group all that together on this side. Make sure that's extra nice and tight. Alright. Now two from this side. So there's basically, since there's two different bundles here, if I get them kind of sort of pulled apart, I can actually better see which are my two groups to pull from. So there we go. Here are two. If I untangle this, I can get this closer to the top. There we go. Get that as far in as possible. And when I tie this really tight at the top, that will help hold those both in place. Okay, now, again, we're trying to make it look random. This has a whole bunch of different colors. If I went from light to dark or whatever, that's not very random. There's a real fine art to trying to look random. So just try your best. Don't pick the same colors to go after each other, that kind of thing, I suppose. So don't put two yellows next to each other. Just try to balance everything as best as you can. I wish I had better advice for that. It's just, you're trying to create a random look. Now, mind you, maybe you want it to start off with a very set pattern, and then later on let it go into something completely random. And that would be a different look. That's not unacceptable. It's just not what I did on what was one of my more popular bags. So, trying to show you how that went. And we're going to do this in a much smaller scale, so this is nowhere near as big as that. And we're also showing lessons that were learned in making that big monstrosity, so that way you don't make an error that I made. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to come down this side over here, and then I will do my first row before I actually even bother doing the same kind of grouping together for the other side. Alright. So that's sort of looking pretty random already. Got to be careful here. It looks like I got a few reds left. Don't want to put them, leave them like to last or something. That would kind of break that sensation of randomness or whatever. So let's see. There's purple in there. So one of the beauties of this is you can't really go wrong. Although, I suspect you could ruin it by trying to pretend to be random when you're not being random at all. If you start making it a patterned thing, I think somebody would notice that pretty quickly. So now to get our knot line nice and straight, we know that the knots run pretty much like this. What I'm going to do is I am going to clip this off to the side, and that'll keep that nice and straight, and it'll help make this a little bit nicer. Now, that has a lot to do with the fact that we aren't just doing like a candy stripe, nice straight rows, or patterns that are nice and symmetrical. This one kind of goes to its own tune. So behind this up here, where you can't see apparently, at least it doesn't appear to from what I can see, is my number generator. So it says 3 is my first number, right? So that's fine. I did 1 knot already. I'll do 2 more. 1, 2. Now the next number is 6, right? So that's easy enough. What I do is I have my 3 knots there. Now I take this next string and it comes in doing it going to the left and then going to the right. And that's 1. And I will take this out to the end because it said 6 was my next number. So 2, 3, 4. I didn't plan it to land just so perfectly, but there it is. And I can go move on to the next row. And mind you, I just take this, throw it over to the side because I do not cross over this string. Now this is where I went wrong on the big bag, was because I brought this string in. I had 9 coming this way and 11 going that way. And that's why the big bag is as big as it is, was because I kept trying to get it to level out flat and I couldn't do it and I couldn't figure out why. And that this right here, this was it. So this string here will connect onto that next square thing over. So when I go to join these, it's imperative that this one and this one are the ones that join. Mind you, I could bring both sides down 1, but then I would end up with like a little notch at the top of each one of these loops. And that's not the look that I'm looking for. So, again, this is how I get it to be nice and close and tight up at the top there. All right, so we did the 3, we did a 6. Now next row, let me see a couple of these up at the top. That looks pretty easy to get to. Now the kumis for this 20 string thing were made by my wife. I will include photographs of that. Also, there'll be photographs on the website, so you'll be able to actually go and take a look at that as well. All right. Oddly enough, so it's it's a 3 and a 6 again. So 1, 2. No, that's just 1. This is 2. 2. 3. And this color will come back out again. Now each one of these strings was cut to 1/3 of a skein, which is just over 2 meters. 2.3, I think, meters, give or take. Because the skein is what, 8? So it's 8 divided by 3, whatever that is. So why so long versus a small bag? It is because something like this can happen. I did 3 there. Now I'm doing another 6 here. If this string kept getting used like that all the way down, a lot of the other strings would be very, very long, but this one could end up running short. And because it's just a small bag, I don't want to have to add string for any kind of reason. It would just, yeah, that wouldn't work out very well at all. And see, despite the fact that we have this thing trying to be a straight line, this is starting to bow out that way because we've had that same intersection at that same point going across that line. So it's already trying to not be very straight. So this is where this comes in. If this wasn't here, this thing could have gone really, really crazy. I see another pair of colors close together. I'm going to grab them. And we will do the next row. So the next 2 numbers is a 1 and then a 1. So that's interesting. That'll be different. And by sticking with the randomness, like again, if you don't have a computer, just use the dice. This time I'm using 1 to 6, so regular dice, not a problem. The big bag was 1 to 10, so the kind of dice that you would get from D&D. So 1 with the pink, then this orange gets a 1. And then it's this kind of a white color, gets a 5. Next number is a 5 as well. So here we go. 3. 4. And 5. So the next number was a 5. Unfortunately, there is no room at the end here to do 5 more. So what I'm going to do is I will just take this color and go to the end. Now, there's no possible way I'm going to be able to remember that this string was meant to be a 5. And it's only 2 spaces, which means obviously it could have been much longer. So what I do is I basically, in order to keep things really random, I came up with a set of rules. And in this case, what it is when I go to join this, as I look at my numbers as to what the next one is, when I go to do this, if it was said 6, I would do 4 more knots. If it said 1, then I leave that and then I come in with a new string. So if it's less than what is here, I just leave it as is. If it's greater than this, I just add the additional number to make that. And that way, as the other pieces join together, as you start to put all this together to get your cylinder, it still has that same sort of random feel to it. So even with, so the first ones, those were 6s, right? So anything that you rolled is either going to be equal to or less than. So that means these 2 will stay exactly there. That next color that comes in is going to have to come from the other side, right? And then, well, first you have this one is going to be coming across here, right? And then this one would be coming across here. If these are the 2 I end up grabbing, it's just randomly pulled one. So, but making a little rule like that, like I will always do this, and staying consistent to those little rules will help your overall look to a project like this. You will end up with something that is, there will be a certain kind of a symmetry to it. Even if it's this random thing, it'll still have like a consistency to it. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm really trying hard to lay this out in a way that's easy to understand. And there's a lot to this. I mean, this was, I don't think that anybody has ever done anything quite like this prior. And I'm not sure that since I never did a tutorial, I don't think anybody has done it quite since, because I don't think anybody understood what the heck I was doing. So I think this tutorial is going to come in handy for some people. All right. So the next one, it was a 5, 5. Okay. Oh, 2 3s. All right. So random.org is where I got my random number generator from. I basically set it up to have it give me 20 numbers, which getting kind of close to this 2 3s will take me to my 10th. So that's 3. And this one. I just kind of did it like that because for me to have to look up at the screen and see what the numbers are if I did 100 of them and stuff, I would easily lose track. I did think about trying to do some kind of a strange equation, like, you know, how the numbers from pi go, which that could be interesting. I don't think anybody, even if you did it, I don't think anybody would recognize it for that. Like, they wouldn't see it and go, "Oh, you've made the whole pi series or something." I don't think it would happen, but it would be interesting. And you know, if you choose to do that, go for it. Okay, so 3. The next one is another 3. So that kind of works out because there's 9 strings going across here. So. Next, is 1, 5, and 2. There's 1. And then this one's 5. Now, in a project like this, I did not go to any great lengths to like try to find the perfect colors to go together. Mind you, the other one was left over after all the strings that were left after making a couple bags. I had bought enough set to make 3 bags. Just happened to be that one of the bags I intended to do was very random. This case, I'm using, because I like to double up my strings, and since I cut it in thirds, I end up using 2 for that, and these are the other thirds. Now, normally I would just make a random bracelet or something out of that, but in this instance I thought, hey, wouldn't it be kind of fun to make it a little bit more, you know, insane, a little zany or something. So let's see, it's 1, 5, and 2. So for my small bag, it is 120 strands. So, no, take that back. It's 100 strands. 100 strands because I'll have 5 loops. So there's that. All right, we are almost there. Go ahead and do that red one that keeps trying to do. I just didn't want it too close to the other reds. Looks like I'm going to end up with a lot of greens. Alright. Oh, the last number over there was a 2. So, but it could only do 1 knot. Didn't matter anyways, right? So then it's a 5. And a 5. And I know that it's possible that you could try to fake doing random. You could, you know, pick the first number that comes to your mind or whatever. The problem is you're working really close to this piece. And what you think is really random that way when you can step back and you see the whole bigger thing, it's tends to be something that I think people would pick up on, like, nope, I see something happening here. You know, that you were too afraid to do, you know, a 5-5 or a 3-3-3 or, you know, whatever it is, whatever comes across. It's hard to be random because you genuinely think, when you think of random, you think it's just all over the board, but sometimes that's not how it works. So it's just better to have the dice. This instance, I'm not using it. It's been a bunch of noise. I'd be shaking a little bottle. The dice would be bouncing around in there, make a bunch of noise. Not such a big deal when I was, out babysitting the in-laws. But for a video, I think it would be kind of nerve-wracking. So definitely not trying to put you guys through that. All right. So it was a 5-5. Now it's 2-5-6. An interesting phenomenon about this, though, is that because the strings move this way and then get changed and go underneath, coming in this direction, right? Then if they happen to come back out again, they can often be close to directly, see, like this orange came from here, which came from here. So it was running underneath to there, and then, came up for one, and then went this way. So there's a lot of like a zigzaggy motion, but you're only seeing the top portion of this. So, not that any of that really mattered. I just wanted to point out kind of when you look at these, you'll see a same color kind of coming up and keeps swooping back. And that's exactly why. So, I had thought when I first came up with the idea that you would see all the colors slowly shifting this direction. But what I hadn't taken into account when it came to that was how long it took before a color might resurface. And the longer it took, the further back to the left it was. So, just an observation. So it's 2-5-6. And the next one's a 6. And that's all my 20 numbers. And we're almost done with this whole cube. Like that. So I only have to refresh this once to finish this up. Alright, what do we got? 3 colors left. 2 strands. Okay. This is 6. And this one's a good kind of one for that whole meditative feeling that bracelets can sometimes give you. Mostly, I think, because how I have to keeping track of what the number is. So because my mind is like, concentrating on strings and concentrating on the number, and there's no real pattern, so I'm not worried about, doing something wrong. Yeah, it's just very relaxing. Okay, so the next number is 5. Having to keep track of the number, though, does make it a little bit more difficult for me to talk to you because it just takes another level of concentration. So, it is what it is. Deal with it. If the audio is too terrible, I'll just record over it. So, not sweating it. So this is a 1. This is 5. And this is my last row for this one. So what I will do is I will join these two pieces together next. It's 3. Alright, so the next number is 3. That's taking me right to the end. And since I already had a couple pieces together, this is going to be easy. I just bring this in. Line these two up really nice and close. Now before I was telling you, this one already has a 6, so that's, I don't even have to think about when that row happens. I've got this one here to work with, and I need to go across all of these. So I'm going to take these and get these out of the way because I won't be using these at all. So just having them out of the way just makes the job a little bit easier, just an added thing. So 3, so the next one is 2. Nice and close. I want it to look as seamless as possible. 1 and 2. The next one is a 1. The next one is a 6. Yeah, so I decided to make this a 1 through 6, both because it's a smaller bag, and that because for this example I didn't want to necessarily have to make you guys find like the D&D dice. I had some around for playing with GIMP, which is basically a Linux-based like a Photoshop thing. Trying to make some cool special effects and stuff, and trying to use the dice to help create randomness in how those happen. Whoa, whoa. I just ended up grabbing 1 instead of 2 strands there. So and 6. That's 1. Okay, so the next number is 1. Next one is a 2. And the next number after that is a 3. So like I was saying, sometimes random seems a little bit weird, right? So 1, 2, 3. And again, I think that's why it's hard for people to actually imitate random, is we don't want it to look so whatever that was. next one is 5. Which will take me all the way past the end, actually. So I think you have the gist of how this works and how they're now basically joined. Again, if you guys have any questions, obviously, just leave comments. I do try to respond to everybody. Okay, the next one is a 4. Then the next is a 6. And 6. Cool. So my next number was a 1, and you can see here there was 2 knots, so I'm not going to add any more to that. And I'm going to go ahead and take the next number, which was a 4, and run with that. That is again a 4. So I was talking about strings that could potentially get used a lot more than the others. This one here that I'm working with started out with a 6, then a 4. Now here it's done another 4. It is seriously working way harder than pretty much anything else on this whole thing so far. So that would be an example of why I'm using such long strings. Mind you, I'm going to have a lot of scrap, but I would rather have stuff that I have to cut off than to be cutting a project short because I just don't have the string for it. So I've shown you how to start them. I've showed you how to join them. And in the next segment, I will show you how I join them all into becoming a circle. So I'll be right back with that. Okay, so rather than going straight to the join, I still had one more segment that I needed to add on to the overall thing. So I thought, what the heck, I'll do a time lapse. So, meanwhile, you can't see it, but I've got my computer is just above this whole thing, and I'm still using that random page. And for the most part, I was able to generate enough numbers, as long as it didn't do too many low numbers, to do these long rows. Now, this took me all the way down to where there'll be 50 strings running straight down this whole thing. So yeah, this is what ends up becoming the overall length that I ended up using. So that was, you know, it just happened to go that way. It wasn't like I planned it out or thought it out like that. It just worked out, and I thought, cool, that's, you know, whatever. And at some point or another, I started playing with this idea. I'm not sure if it'll shows up in this video or not, but somewhere in here, I was playing with the idea that when it's a 1, just running it straight over, because when you just bounce 1, it really kind of messes with your straight line. The only trouble is you kind of can run into an issue with the pattern itself if in like the next row that happens to be the color that pops up, right? So then you have to use a little creative licensing to not use a particular number, like skip by it or, you know, stop before it or something. But it actually helped to keep the body kind of running in straighter lines and stuff. I don't know. I'm kind of, you know, undecided as to whether or not I'll do that in the next bag or whatever, but it's just something I kind of picked up along the way and figured I'd let you know, because you might actually see it at some point and think, wait, what? So that's why. Other than that, everything is still, I let the randomizer do all the work, because it really is kind of easy to lose track of, like, I don't know, like every once in a while a randomizer does something like 1, 2, 3, and you're like, really? Like, I would never do that if I was trying to generate a random number in my head. So it does come in handy. It does keep the whole pattern from looking too weird or too man-made or something. So yeah, that's kind of a thing. But getting all of this done, it took a while. I think I may have actually mentioned it in my Facebook page, but I had a hose that goes down to my plants from, my fish tank has plants that help keep the water clear. And one of the hose had kind of came unglued or whatever. So that kind of put a big damper on my day. Basically, this segment here is where I pretty much, this was all I could do for that first day. So mind you, it's not a bad bit of making, really. So yeah, whatever. Yeah, not bad at all, I think. Anyways, so when I end up stopping here, this was because I stopped the video because my butt was going numb from sitting in the chair for too long, and I really needed something to drink. So yeah, I figured, like, yeah, it's a good enough time, might as well stop. So yeah, I have to say, I really like the way this thing comes out. I guess in the final product, you'll really see it. A lot of the colors end up being in a straight up and down kind of row, because they come out for a little bit, then they duck into the opposite direction, and then they come out a little bit. And that's what I think I kind of noticed the most when trying to find some kind of a semblance of order. Plus the fact that there's not as much worry about like missing a knot or having, you know, something kind of going wrong, like when you have a real set pattern. So yeah, I like this one. This one went really well. This was a lot of fun. And that's what it looked like when I finished it. At least that part of it. So got up all excited, and basically to join it together, I find it just really easier to wrap it around something, whether it's cardboard or this just happens to be a little piece of plastic I have that I've used on other small bags like this.
because there's so much string. There's 100 strands, right? So by putting the plastic there, 50 of them are suddenly behind the plastic, which certainly makes it a whole lot easier to see what you're working with next. I couldn't, you see, I didn't do a full row. I didn't go all the way down or whatever. That has to do with the fact that I would have to keep rotating it. And basically, I'm really just trying to get this thing joined well enough that then I can go ahead and continue working that out. The thing is you just can't accidentally take the second row further out than you took the first row. That's, you know, just be cautious of that. Other than that, it's relatively self-explanatory. Get 4, 5, 6 rows, you know, in there before trying to wind it around. 10 really would have made more sense. Get 10 rows going and then give it a little roll around, and then I could bring it down. Because basically after I had this well joined, that's the next thing I did. I showed you where that longest point was, so I counted 10 up from there, and that's where all these strings will be going to, is just all the way down minus the last 10, and then I get the same sort of V shapes that were at the top end up being down at the bottom as well. So that's kind of a thing. All right, so yeah, there's, I guess, not as much explanation going into this. I've done this before. If you have questions, there are some other videos where I really kind of went heavier into this, but it's just the same as doing a double wide. And if you can't do a double wide bracelet, then you're probably really not ready to be doing anything like this anyways. So yeah, that's just being realistic, honest, and all that. So all right. Yeah, I kind of spent the better part of the day putting this bit together. So this was pretty exciting. Oh, mind you, that board, that clipboard, that's just a cutting board. So nothing too fancy, really. It's kind of easier to use that than even the easels at times. So there you go, all joined.
What are you doing there?
Well, that was just trimming down the string. Sometimes when the loop is off, it makes one side really long, which gets annoying. But I am trying to put the angles of 10 by 10 back into this. So if that works out, I will be able to then put the base on. So basically I just, when it came down and did the whole 50, it's just now going to be, that will be the whole overall length. So it should be really cool. I'm really getting excited. And because each one of these is getting shorter, and then the next group will be even shorter, I actually think I might actually have this thing finished tonight.
Ooh.
Yeah, then I get to post it. So did you catch that? Let me rewind it. I actually think I might actually have this thing finished tonight.
Ooh.
Yeah, then I get to post it. So yeah, see what that is my over sense of confidence and zealous to finish, kind of almost childlike need to get things accomplished. So yeah, that didn't happen. It wasn't done in one day. But I still stand by the idea that, you know, if you think you can, it will give you that energy to finish things. So back to the video. So what you probably couldn't see in that last picture was that there is an uneven number of strings on either side. Basically 21 on one side and 20 on the first. So apparently I can't count. So somewhere there is a 9 in one of the rows, and I have to go back. And this is the kind of setbacks that happen on a project like this that made it so it took longer. And this is kind of what happened with the much larger bag. With the exception that the much larger bag, what I hadn't taken into account was I got the numbers wrong. When I came all the way to the end and got that last string,
I essentially was sending 11 to one side and 9 to the other. So this time I did it correctly. I just, where I was supposed to bring 10 down and 10 down and 10 down, apparently I didn't do that right. So now I have to go back and I have to find that and fix it. And this is the kind of delays that get frustrating, that take some of the wind out of the sail. And if you're a perfectionist, that definitely hinders you. But at the same time, I mean, I want it to come out right. So anyways, back to work. Okay, so I don't know if you could see that, but it was the purple row was, it came out and then got caught in, I don't know. So since it was over there, that was actually the first row of going at it. I don't know how I made the mistake. It was careless mistake, but it's been corrected now and I can get on with it. And I basically only have like 100 knots to go to get this segment done, and that's it. So, all right. Okay, so now this is me completing the base of the bag. There was some dialogue and some top-down footage from another camera that was somehow lost, and I have no idea how that even happened, but this is what I got. It's difficult to see, but each time I'm taking 2 strands from what's on the right hand side and tying 1 knot over top of that, and I go down 3 rows just copying that 1, 2, 3, and then take one of those strands and run it inside of the bag and out the other. And I'm using that tool that you can see there on the right, the thing with the little red knob on it. It's kind of like a huge needle in the sense that you can kind of string the string through there and pull it through exactly like I'm doing. But it's made for putting an elastic or things into a hoodie or that kind of stuff. Super useful for this though. You can open it up, so if you have something like bigger you won't need to clip it onto, it kind of opens like a safety pin. So that's kind of a thing. But where I kind of ran into trouble with this is on a regular pattern or whatever, you have certain colors that you can drop at once. So like one of the earlier ones I did, there was a lot of black, you know, as a background color. And so when I got to the bottom, black was the first thing I removed. But this, I basically was going, you know, take 2 strings, tie a knot over it 3 times, remove the string. And trying to gauge myself going inwards. And that kind of worked out just fine. Except I didn't get quite the spiral I wanted. It kind of came more in like a straight line. And essentially, if you can imagine this, so what I'm doing is there are strings that go from the left-hand side moving towards the right, and there are strings that came from the right-hand side that are slowly being lost in the process. And if you imagine that if you keep losing the ones on the right-hand side, if those kept being removed, eventually you would have nothing for the left-hand side to tie to. And that is exactly what sort of happens here. So as I whittled it down, you know, I took out a string and then go 2 more and take out a string. So below that, 3 rows down, those 2 individuals, they then get whittled down. So, you know, they tie across for 3 rows. Then there was 1 row, right? So I just tied a knot over top of that because, you know, there was no point. So it kept getting smaller, kept getting smaller, fewer and fewer strings until I was down to just 2 strings coming from the right hand side, right, that I'm able to tie to. And once it got down to that, I'm bringing those 2 strings around and around, and I'm having to leave off some of the strings that were coming from the left. And, still keeping my knots all going in the same direction, right? But as that tapering happened, it got to be where I'm dropping more and more and more until it was basically just every other string was being sent up the middle. And it worked. It pulled it in nicely. I have a nice flat bass. Really, I'm really trying hard to teach how to do this. It just seems that every single time I do it, the nuances and some of the lessons I learn from it are different each time. So I kind of want to give you the confidence, but then it seems like every time I approach this, even at a point here, I started like questioning myself, like, oh no, is this going to work right? And of course it does, but there is a few moments in there where you're like, what's going to happen? And I think that's natural. I think we all have instances of where we doubt ourselves in these kind of things, and especially a big project like this. This was, even just with 100 strings, I mean, that's still a pretty big project. But it turns out nice. I highly recommend it. I suggest doing this once, you have the confidence built up, or, and definitely get the parts. I mean, that thing that pulls the strings through, you really kind of need that thing. Trying to push it through with your finger seems like, nah, I can do that. You can't. It won't work. It'll slow you down so much. See here you can see, I'm doing a knot over 2 strings, a knot over another 2 strings. And then I pull the 2 strings through. So, see, 1, 2, and 3, and then pull the 2 through, right? And the big thing is trying to make sure that it's pulling inwards. It's got a nice curvature happening. You might not see it being totally flat at this point, but you see it pulling inwards. And that you're not having like some kind of a big gap where the knot was too far strung out to get to the next one. If you are like that, then you know that you're basically bringing it in too quickly, and you don't want that, because then you can't. I don't know how to say that. If you drop off too many strings too soon, then the gap between where the string is going into the next one, it's just a big, huge stretch, and it'll be really, really obvious. So, yeah, avoid that. But you can see, like, I roll it around, put my knots in, roll it around. So it's this little setup with having a board where I can easily get the clip to it. That worked out pretty good. You can see on my computer, I've got my cameras hooked to it, so I could kind of see if I was in frame, and I was able to check the focus. I bumped it a few times. You think you can tell that, because whatever, that kind of changed a lot. But yeah, it's really more obviously focused on my work than checking on the monitor. Otherwise, I'd have probably turned that some more. Yeah, so, and you can see how the lines are coming in, and yeah, it does. It ends up looking really, really straight rows. And again, I couldn't see where those other strands were to drop them off. There's no, with all the colors being so random, it's really, that was a new challenge. That was something new. So I have some thoughts on how to change that up, and I'm going to do that on my next bag, which is going to be, again, kind of random, but kind of really, really different. So, yeah, if you've been watching this far in, I suspect you'll be around for that video as well, because, you know, obviously you're a fan, you enjoy these kind of things. And again, you know, as I do this, the more I do these, the more things I'm learning that I can share with you. So yeah, that's going to be fun. So yeah, you can totally see how this is, the shape kind of, and so you can see like some bits of it are sort of dimpled in or whatever. You don't have to worry about that. That once the whole thing is said and done and you kind of get your, you know, the strings tied off on the inside, and you kind of push in with your hands and get the thing, you know, back to, because you have to turn it inside out to tie off the strings, right? Once you get it to the right side again, all those little dimples, that kind of weird shape or whatever, that works itself out. That's not a big deal. So, and here, yeah, you can see I'm kind of getting down. There was like 3 strings. Now I'm kind of gonna bring it down to where there's just the 2 strings, right? And I kind of go around a little bit with just the 2 strings. Yeah. Being able to rotate it, though, that really does help. I can't even express that enough. That's what's great about having the loops at the end. I'm basically just clipping down the loops onto there. And the weight of that board helps out a lot. If I could have clipped the board down to my desk, though, that would have been great. Unfortunately, right now with the whole COVID thing, there's all the hardware stores are closed, so I can't go get another clip. And the ones that I had before are being currently used for the camera that didn't actually produce any shots here. So I guess I could have actually gotten away with using the clip, but I didn't know that it wasn't going to produce the shots. I didn't know it wasn't going to record my audio either. So slightly disappointed there. Anyways, so yeah, you can see that the board does try to slide towards me and stuff, and I keep having to push it back. So that's where the clip would have really come in handy there. But overall, I mean, the process works. It's not bad. And like I said, the little dimple thing, you don't have to worry about that. Here you can kind of start to see where I start to, just pull that string through. Like, yep, that one's done. Don't need it there anymore. Pull it through. Do a couple knots. Take a string. Pull it through. A couple more knots. Until it gets really right down there. And once you get to the point to where trying to pull a string through starts to hang up because of that little red thing doesn't want to go through there, you're pretty much done. You just end up pulling the rest of the string through and tying it off in a big knot on the inside, because you really don't want to get it down to the point where you can't do that. See, that's where I right there. Now I'm going to take half the strings and pull them through. And then I take the other half and pull it through. And this is what it looks like right here. I think it turned out great. Here, let me show you what it looked like where I pulled it out inside out. All right, so that's that. Some of those strings where it just kind of got drawn through and not kind of pulled into the middle of the other pieces, those were tied to a neighboring one. And then the group in the center was all tied into one great big knot. But that's it. That's all there is to it. And I thank you for watching the video. And until next time, don't get your strings in a bunch.